These are the luckiest people who survived the impossible.
Stephen McCormack. Stephen, an experienced truck driver from New Zealand, was working on his truck.
Okay.
He was positioned between the truck's bumper and the trailer when something crazy happened.
Whoa,
He
no,
slipped
no.
and fell,
Oh,
but something
no.
felt off. He didn't feel just regular pain.
Huh?
He felt his body inflating like a balloon,
Why?
nearly doubling in size.
What is happening?
His colleagues and his son rushed to help him, quickly realizing what had actually happened. Stephen had fallen onto the brass valve that supplies compressed air to the truck's brakes. The valve punctured his bum, forcing pressurized air into his body. They immediately shut off the air supply, laid him on the ground, and called an ambulance. Unfortunately,
He actually got inflated like a balloon animal. I didn't know that was possible.
both emergency vehicles in the area
I should not be laughing. This is crazy.
An entire hour. When he finally arrived at the hospital, doctors understood the severity of his condition. The air had separated fat tissue from muscle, filling his abdomen, chest, and even the spaces around his lungs, heart, and behind his eyelids. To help him breathe, doctors inserted a tube through his ribs and into his lungs. As for the trapped air, it had to be expelled naturally.
He literally had to fart it out.
Days.
He had to fart out all of the gas that he accidentally put up his butt. What are you talking about? This is insane, and it's only going to get crazier.
Stephen made a full recovery, and doctors later determined that if the valve had punctured another part of his body, it could have damaged a blood vessel.
Oh, so it was good that it went up his butt.
Joan Murray was an experienced skydiver, having already completed 35 jumps. It was supposed to be just another routine dive, and as she plummeted at 120 miles per hour, she attempted to deploy her parachute.
Did not open, right?
Because it didn't.
No, what about the
After multiple
backup?
tries, she reached for her reserve parachute, which, to her relief, deployed successfully.
But did it twist?
Another problem quickly arose. She began spinning
uncontrollably,
causing the parachute's cords to tangle into a knot.
That is one of my biggest fears of all time. I have been skydiving before, and most of the time, nothing bad happens. It's like safer than driving in a car, supposedly. But this stuff scares the bejesus out of me, because if your parachute doesn't work, I mean, you do have a backup technically, but what if your backup fails as well? You need an option C. Every parachute diver or person in the sky that's plummeting towards Earth, they should have 3 different options. Not 2, 3 options. That is why I always wear a backpack with a parachute in there.
Rendering it useless. She crashed into the ground at 80 miles per hour.
What?
And upon impact, she heard a loud
She's
crack
alive?
before losing consciousness.
Oh my God.
Joan fell into a coma and was rushed to the hospital.
She actually lived.
Performed multiple complex reconstructive surgeries and blood transfusions.
She fell from the sky.
The entire right side of her body was crushed.
Oh.
Yet, incredibly, 2 weeks later, she woke up from the coma and made a full recovery.
Are you serious, guys? She fell out of the sky. She is like a fallen angel. That is the most incredible thing. I mean, the last story was pretty unique, but this one is way cooler. I've never heard of somebody that has survived literally falling from the sky. She hit the ground at 80 miles an hour. When I'm going 80 miles an hour in my car, I start to get a little bit nervous. I'm not gonna lie. And the fact that she just slammed into the earth, splat, and then survived, this woman is next level.
The reason she survived was just crazy. By pure chance, she landed directly on a fire ant nest, disturbing the venomous ants. In response, they came out of their nests and swarmed her body, stinging and biting her over 200 times.
Wait a second.
Fire ant venom, known as solanopsin, stimulates the nervous system. The overwhelming amount of it that was injected into her body kept her heart beating until paramedics arrived, saving her life.
I did not think that story could get any more insane, but it did, and I will be telling everybody that I know about this story.
Margaret Guire. Margaret was a young Canadian woman who had just married her husband, Herbert, in 1950.
Hi, Herbert.
To celebrate, they decided to take a trip and boarded the RMS Lusitania.
I thought that was
City,
maybe the Titanic.
They were enjoying their trip, having a routine dinner on the ship, when suddenly
Ooh, what was that? The toilet?
Torpedoed by a German submarine.
Oh no!
Herbert immediately escorted his wife Margaret to a lifeboat, where she was joined by 3 other women and a baby. However, as she looked up, she saw the ship's massive smokestacks above her, and she feared they might collapse onto their lifeboat. In a moment of panic, she climbed back up the stairs to the deck, while Herbert, believing she was safe, boarded another lifeboat with other passengers.
Herbert, you have no idea!
Rapidly sank. Margaret tried to swim away from the wreckage, but her efforts were in vain.
This is the original Titanic.
The ship submerged, pulling her and 2 other men into one of the smokestacks. Miraculously.
Wait a second. So are you about to tell me that they got sucked under the water by the weight of the ship going down, but she still survived? I mean, Okay, if I had to guess before he even says anything, I'm gonna guess that they got sucked under and then they got like sucked up into part of the ship that had a little air bubble, so they were actually able to kind of just like go down there and breathe the air. That's the only way, right?
A sudden explosion from below blasted her back to the surface,
What?
where she was spotted and rescued by a nearby lifeboat.
Are you
As she
kidding
looked
me?
around, she saw Herbert in another lifeboat crying, believing she had died.
She got torpedoed.
Julie
That's
McSorley
amazing.
and Liz Cottrell were kayaking in San Luis Obispo, California, drawn by a spectacular event: humpback whales feeding on fish in the bay.
I think I
There
saw
were
a
lots
video of
tourists
this.
on their boats and kayaks watching the whole thing. And even though whale watching is a popular activity, it comes with important safety precautions. Experts recommend staying at least 300 feet away from the feeding zone to avoid dangerous encounters.
I mean, yeah, guys, I don't know if you've ever seen a whale in real life. Those things are big. Those things are massive. There's a reason why the blue whale is the biggest creature on planet Earth of all time. Not even dinosaurs were bigger than this thing. So there's a good reason why you should stay kind of far away from a whale. Even though it's not like a shark or a killer whale that might attack you, it still is a whale. And a lot of people, I've heard stories of like they get too close to a whale and the whale swims down under really, really far, and it creates like a jet stream, and then you get sucked up with the whale, kind of like the last lady did. Now you just gotta hope that the whale also explodes and maybe like can torpedo you with the power of like a whale fart or something, or else you're gonna be stuck down there, 60 feet down in the ocean.
Unfortunately, Julie and Liz misjudged the distance. A tightly packed swarm of fish, known as a bait ball, suddenly moved alarmingly
Not
close
the
to them,
bait
but
ball.
They weren't the only ones to notice. Their presence had also
Oh,
caught
no.
the attention of a humpback
That's
whale.
a big
Before they had
humpback
time to
whale.
react, the whale lunged forward
Yo!
to swallow the fish, but in the process, it also scooped up Julie and Liz. Trapped
What?
inside its massive
What?
mouth, they probably thought that they were about to be swallowed whole.
Are you kidding
After
me?
all, humpback whales can grow up to 56 feet long.
Big.
A huge size from a human perspective.
That's big.
However, despite their enormous mouths, humpback whales have relatively small throats,
Huh.
only about the size of a human fist and capable of stretching to just 15 inches in diameter.
That's it?
They also lack teeth, meaning the two women weren't crushed. Luckily, a whale's natural instinct is to spit out anything that isn't fish, and that's exactly what happened.
Oh
Moments
my
later,
goodness.
Julie and Liz were spat out from the whale's mouth and surfaced unharmed. Matthew,
That is a crazy story. Imagine going to dinner like next week with some random friends and you're like, hey, I got a good story for you. I got eaten by a whale. I mean, nobody's going to top that.
Matthew was heading
Matthew
to his
Blow.
factory for a routine shift, just like any other day. Upon arriving, he immediately got to work. As he walked past
Good
an
soldier.
automated conveyor belt,
Oh,
he
no.
suddenly felt his overalls snag on something. Unfortunately, it was the conveyor itself. Before he could react,
No.
he was pulled onto the belt and dragged
No.
toward a 5-inch opening.
Oh,
Within
but
seconds,
what?
his entire body was forced through the narrow tunnel. He
What?
could hear the cracks of his bones
No.
as the machine spat him out on the other side.
Okay, guys, remind me to never work in a factory ever in my entire life. That is my new biggest fear. I didn't even know that was a possibility until right now. And I am not going to be risking my life by going into a factory. Unless it's a cookie factory. Then in that case, maybe you can convince me.
Miraculously, he remained conscious.
How did his head
Matthew's
fit?
agonizing screams alerted his coworkers, who rushed to the scene. What they saw was horrifying. His back was broken in 2 places.
Oh.
His pelvis, ribs, and hips were nearly completely
he got
crushed,
pulverized.
And his abdomen was severely torn.
Eesh.
He was rushed to the hospital, but doctors had little hope for his survival. They even advised his partner to prepare for the worst.
No.
However, against all odds, Matthew survived.
He's built
After
different.
6 surgeries and a month in the hospital, he slowly began to recover.
Wow.
18 months later, he made a full recovery and even returned to work.
Wait, hold on. Wait, did he just say return to work? Guys, I don't know about you. Comment down below, but I do not think I would go back to the place where I was forced into a tiny little hole by accident. I don't think you're gonna catch me back there, ever. You could pay me $1 bajillion, and I do not think I'm going back there.
Taiba, a young Indian girl, went out for a walk when she came across a construction site.
Mm,
Intrigued,
oh.
she decided to explore the
Bad
area.
idea.
The site was filled with debris and half-finished structures,
Oh, no.
making it extremely risky to navigate, especially without proper equipment or experience. As she walked through the site, she tripped and fell
No.
neck first onto a long metal rod.
Ah, what?
Bystanders witnessed the horrifying scene and immediately called for an ambulance.
Ugh.
When Taiba arrived at the hospital, doctors were left stunned. Miraculously, the rod had missed all vital nerves and blood vessels in her head.
So but you're telling me it went up through the neck and then it went through her nose and then missed the brain? This girl, it might be the luckiest girl of all time.
After a 35-minute surgery,
That's it?
doctors successfully removed the rod. Amazingly, she
Wow.
was discharged just 3 days later. Had she fallen just a few inches further forward, she would have died. Frayne
Oh
Selleck.
my gosh. I mean, that is incredible. It reminds me that, yeah, you guys should not go near construction sites or quarries or anywhere else where there's sharp objects. There was one time I went down to a quarry and there was a big pond because the quarry got filled in with water, and I jumped in and yeah, there was like a metal pole that was kind of sticking up. It must have been underwater and it went almost through my foot. So I had to go to the hospital and get stitches. But yeah, stay away from work sites. They are no good. Just go do something normal, like touch grass or something less dangerous.
Frayne Selleck is an elderly music teacher from Croatia, and he's both the luckiest and unluckiest man on earth.
Interesting.
His first crazy experience happened in 1962 when he was on a train. A fault in the tracks caused the train to derail and plunge into the freezing river below.
It went into
Most
a river?
passengers either died in the crash or drowned in the submerged train.
But not Frayne.
Miraculously survived with only a broken arm and managed to swim to shore. In 1963,
I wonder if he was the only survivor of that.
Just a year after the train incident, he was on a small plane when,
No.
mid-flight, both engines failed. As the aircraft went into a
What?
free fall, a malfunctioning door blew open, yanking Frayne out of the plane.
And
without a parachute,
what does he
must
do?
have thought he was going to die. The plane crashed into a hill, killing all 19 passengers on board.
Wait.
However, Frayne survived by landing on a haystack, escaping with only minor injuries.
What in the GTA is happening? Frayne is him. Frayne is, yeah, like he said, the luckiest man maybe of all time. Even though a lot of unlucky things are happening, he keeps surviving. He's like a cockroach. Unkillable.
2 years later, in 1965, he was traveling on a bus that was crossing a bridge. The icy conditions caused the bus's wheels to lock up,
No.
sending the vehicle crashing through the safety
Are you
barrier
kidding
and
me?
into the valley below.
What?
4 passengers lost their lives, yet Frayne survived once again. After multiple
What?
accidents involving public transportation, he decided to rely on his own car.
Yeah, guys, at this point, I would start asking questions about Frayne because everybody else keeps dying, but he keeps surviving. I'm not saying Frayne is doing anything, but you gotta be asking these questions, okay? There might be a conspiracy.
To find that it wasn't any safer. In 1970, while driving, his engine suddenly burst into flames.
No way.
Miraculously, he managed to jump out in time and survive.
Are you
But
serious?
this wasn't his only brush with fire. 3 years later, in 1973, while driving another car, the fuel pump ruptured, causing yet another fire. This time, the flames were blown directly toward him through the air vents.
Okay, guys, if I am Frayne Selleck, I am never stepping within 100 feet of any vehicle ever. You wouldn't even catch me on a Razor scooter at this point.
Despite suffering burns, he once again managed to escape. As if that weren't enough,
How?
in 1975, he survived being hit by a bus.
What is
Then,
happening?
Just a year later, he had another near-death experience when his car fell off a mountain road.
Is this
plummeting
real?
300 feet after a careless driver forced him off the road. The car exploded upon impact, but Frayne managed to survive by jumping out of the vehicle's window
Seriously?
and landing on a tree.
No
And by the
way.
He won the lottery in 2000.
Nah, I am done. I am done. That is the craziest story I've ever heard of all time. I need to just double check this. Frayne Selleck. Is it? He's real. He's real. He's Croatian man. Frequent brushes with death. Okay, did he die? Okay, he did die at 87 years old. That is a fantastic life. And yeah, RIP. This video is dedicated to Frano Selleck.